Hello guys, this is Divya Jyoti and I welcome everyone back to my YouTube channel, that is the Techies Voice. Today in this video, we'll be learning about constraints, types of constraints and difference between types of constraints. So, what is constraint? What is a constraint? Sorry for the spelling mistake. So what is a constraint? Constraints are the conditions or rules that are given to column to validate the data. Let me write here. These are conditions or rules that are given to the column to validate, given to columns to validate the data. So constraints are conditions or rules that are given to column to validate the data. Now let's discuss on types of constraints. Types of constraints. The very first type is unique constraint. The very first type is unique constraint. Then second constraint is not null constraints. The second is not null constraint. Third is check constraint. Third is check constraint. Fourth is primary key constraint and fifth is foreign key constraint. Primary key constraint and fifth is foreign key constraint. Foreign key constraint. Now let's discuss about the first type of constraint, that is the unique constraint. Okay, so what is unique constraint? So what is unique constraint? Unique constraints are used to avoid duplicate values that are entered into the cell. Unique constraints are used to avoid duplicate values that are entered into the cell. So what are unique constraints? Unique constraints are those constraints which are used to avoid duplicate values that are entered into the cell. Okay. So now let me take some other color. Now let's discuss on what is not null constraint. And before going to not null constraint, let's discuss what is null. What is null? So null is basically, it is not a constraint. Null, it is not a constraint. And null is a keyword which represents empty cell or nothing. It's a keyword which represents empty cell or nothing. Any operations done with null, resultant will be null only. So guys, as I told you, it's a keyword which represents empty cell or nothing. So obviously anything, any operations you do with null will give you null itself. In RDBMS, two null cannot be same. Okay, this I'll make a star point. in RDBMS, two null values cannot be same. Now, null does not occupy any memory. Null does not occupy any memory. Okay, and the very important point is 0 is not equal to null, because 0 is a value, whereas null is not a value, it's nothing. Okay, now what is not null? Not null is again a keyword that represents the cell should not be empty. Okay, I'll point it here with some other color. So I'll point with it with red color. So not null represents not null represents the cell should not be empty. The cell should not be empty, and even it's a keyword. Not null represents the cell should not be empty, and even it's a keyword. Even it's a keyword. Now we'll be discussing about the third types of constraint, that is the check constraint. So what is check constraint? Okay, what is check constraint? Let me take some other color again here. Check constraint. What is check constraint? Check constraint is used to provide additional conditions or extra conditions to validate the data. I repeat, check constraint is used to provide additional conditions or extra conditions to validate the data. Additional conditions or extra conditions to validate the data. Check constraints. It is used to provide additional conditions or extra conditions to validate the data. The syntax for check constraint is check in bracket conditions, check in bracket conditions, end of execution. Okay. Now, so for example, I'll take another thing like check salary. I've written the short form salary greater than 10,000. Salary greater than 10,000. Okay. Now coming to primary key constraints. Okay, coming to the fourth type of constraint, that is the primary key constraint. So before going to that, let me first clear the screen and then take some other color and write here. Primary key constraint. Now, primary key constraint is used to uniquely identify a record from the table. Okay. It is used to identify records from the table in a unique manner. In a unique manner. Or you can say it is used to uniquely identify a record from the table. Okay. What are the characteristics of primary key constraints? So guys, let's discuss what are the characteristics of primary key constraint. Characteristics of primary key constraints. Okay. Now, a table can have only one primary key. Okay, these are the important points you can face in an interview. So a primary constraints is also an important topic. So a table can have only one primary key. A table can have only one primary key. It should be unique and it should not be not null. It should not be not null. It should be unique. It should be unique and it should not be not null. It is always a combination of unique and not null. It is always a combination of unique and not null. Now, it is not mandatory but design wise preferable. It is not mandatory but design wise preferable. So there are four different type characteristics of primary key constraints. The first one, I repeat, that is a table can have only one primary key. It should be unique and it should not be not null. It is always a combination of unique and not null. It is not mandatory but design wise preferable. Now coming to foreign key constraints. Okay, now coming to foreign key constraints. Foreign key constraints. It is used to establish the connection between any two tables. It is used to establish the connection between any two tables. So foreign key is used to establish the connection between any two tables. Now, similarly, there are few characteristics of foreign key constraints. So there are few characteristics of foreign key constraints. So let's discuss one by one. Characteristics of foreign key constraints. Okay, so let's discuss about the characteristics of foreign key constraints. What are those? Now, so a table can have any number of foreign key. The first point, a table can have any number of foreign key. It can contain duplicate values. It can contain duplicate values. It is not mandatory. It is not mandatory. It is not a combination of unique and not null. It is not a combination of unique and not null. A primary key of a table can only become a foreign key in another table, but it should be a primary key of its own table. A primary key can be a foreign key of another table, but it should be the primary key in its own table. It is also known as referential integrity constraint. So guys, this is the most important question comes in the interview. What is the other name of foreign key constraint? I repeat, the most important question you get in the interview is what is the other name given for foreign key constraint? So with red I am writing other name given for foreign key constraint is known as referential integrity referential integrity constraint. So the other name given for foreign key constraint is known as referential integrity constraint. Foreign key belongs to child table, but it was actually from parent table. I repeat, foreign key belongs to child table, but it was always actually from parent table. Okay. Now, also you can guys get a question in the interview like what are the what are the differences between primary key constraints and foreign key constraints? So, what are the differences between primary key constraints and foreign key constraints? So, guys, whatever I have told you right now in the primary key and the primary key and in the foreign key right here, you can use this all as a difference of both of them. You can use all the characteristics point as a difference of both the key constraints, that is the primary key constraints and the foreign key constraints. Now, coming to the differences between primary key constraints and unique constraints. Okay, so even even I have told about unique constraint, even I have told about unique constraints. So you can also refer to the points discussed in unique constraints and here primary constraints. Can you can go and refer to the points given in unique constraints and take them as a differences of that. Okay, but I would like to say some more points on unique constraints. I'll just write here with some other color. Let me check some other color if I have. Yes, I have some other color. Let me take. Okay, let me take some other color like this. Okay, I have this blue. Okay, these few points on unique constraints. Few points on unique constraints. Okay, so it can accept null value. It can accept null value. Okay, then it's not a combination of unique and not null. It is not a combination of unique and not null. Third, it can't be a foreign key. It can be or it cannot be a foreign key. It cannot become a foreign key. It cannot become a foreign key. And in a table, more than one unique value can be present. In a table, more than one unique value can be present. Okay, so this is what is we have discussed. What is constraints? What are the types of constraints? What are the differences between primary key constraints, foreign key constraints, and unique constraints? And I hope you guys like this video. If you have any queries, do comment in the comment box. And if you guys like this video, do like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. So wish you guys all the best for your future and grow with prosperity. So thank you and have a great day.